Call to order. Let the record show that all aldermen and alderwomen are present. I'd like to try something new at this COW meeting. Since we pledge allegiance at all the city council meetings, I thought that it would be appropriate to also pledge allegiance to the flag at a COW meeting as well. I don't understand why this meeting is any less important, so I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And since our audience is packed, Mr. Stanton, you get the honors.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for obliging me. Before we start, the mayor has a few words.
All of you received my email last week regarding the passing of Mr. Jack A. Young. Jack Allison Young, his middle name. Jack was a longtime citizen of Geneva, actually born in the Philippines. Isn't that interesting? Graduated from the Aurora High Schools, successful businessman. I think Mary probably knows better than anybody, but a lot of us might not know. He was instrumental in the merging of Community Hospital and Delnor Hospital. Served as chairman of the board, helped put that facility on the right course, if you will. He was also involved in an extraordinary amount of civic activities, of course, personally very generous. And if all of you aren't aware, he had an incredible sense of humor as well. So to his son and daughter, and of course, Mrs. Young, I want to extend our sympathies, of course, and I promised the family that we would begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence to honor Jack and to let his family know that we embrace them as much as he embraced this community. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all know, I start my meetings with a little funny, and I'm not going to stop now. So
You are a little funny.
a politician dies and goes to heaven. No, that's not the joke. He's greeted there by St. Peter, and they're walking down a long hallway, and on all the walls are clocks with people's names underneath each clock. And the politician says, "What is this?" St. Peter says, "Everybody on earth has a clock." And he says, "Well, why are they all different times and moving at different speeds?" He said, "Well, every time you lie, the hands of the clock move. As you notice, Mother Teresa's clock, both hands are on the 12s. Reverend Graham's, they've moved a few. And so as the politician is looking around, he says, "Where's my clock?" He says, "Oh, we have that in the office. We're using it as a fan." Thank you. Let's start by approving the
Get these things.
politician's handbook.
Yeah.
Approve the Committee of the Whole minutes for September 14th, 2015.
So, second.
Alderman Cummings, second by Alderman Bruno. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. Number 3, items of business. 3A, recommend approval of special event application for Geneva Chamber of Commerce Christmas Walk and House Tour, December 4th to the 5th of 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Alderman Marks, seconded by Alderman Sino. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. 3B, recommend draft ordinance granting a sign variation in the Eagle Brook Plan Unit Development, Ordinance 95-53, to increase the allowable number of facade signs. Should I put my glasses on? Facade signs from 2 to 3 at 987 South Randall Road in Fidelity Investments. I have a motion.
So moved. Second.
Alderman Marks, second by Alderman Cummings. Any questions? Alderman Marks?
David, just a quick one. I know that all of Randall Road is one plan unit development. I think we had that discussion before. Is this only for this one piece of property?
This is a sign
Just-
variation
just
specific to this property.
And is it
right?
specific to only Fidelity? When they move out, it'll revert back to the normal
It's
rules?
tied to the property, not the business.
It's tied to the property, so that will always have that.
Right, so if a
free
new
signage.
tenant moves in, they would be allowed the same amount of signage.
Can we change that to be just tied to the tenant?
Because if we feel there's a need to. I think that the challenge with this, and the reason they requested the variation was because, although it's kind of a really good corner there at Fargo and Randall, there's a lot of landscaping along the Randall roadside, and then there's the Eagle Brook Monument sign that kind of obstructs
The whole
any
view?
signage that you could
Okay.
put there, and it limits the visibility from the west. So we thought it made sense as a variation for this and really any other tenant.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Any other questions from the dais? From the audience? Thank you, David. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous. 3E, recommend draft resolution amending the Geneva Housing Policy Plan and sub-regional recommendations as contained in the Homes for a Changing Region Plan for the Central Fox Valley Sub-Region, Batavia, Geneva, North Aurora, and St. Charles. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Alderman Bruno makes the motion, Alderman Marks seconds. David?
Okay, thank you. Just have a brief presentation to go through here. This item's a follow-up to the policy discussion we had on June 29th. At that meeting, staff asked if we should explore other sites and recommend changes to our adopted affordable housing plan to consider additional sites for multifamily affordable housing. And really, the reason we posed that question is because we were receiving a lot of interest from affordable housing developers. Since we don't comply with the Affordable Housing Planning and Appeals Act, we don't have 10% of our housing stock as affordable. We have about 5.2%. We're identified as what's known as an opportunity site, which is an automatic 10 points on the application for an Illinois Affordable Housing Tax Credit. So we were getting a number of requests for potential sites in town. Developers were all seeking about 2.5 to 5 acres, looking for about 50 to 60 units in close proximity to amenities. The problem is that as a built-out community, we don't really have a lot of opportunities left, and even the few sites we identified on the affordable housing plan in 2014.
Go back, I didn't see that last.
Sure. Many of the sites that we identified on the affordable housing plan back in 2014 are no longer available, and those sites are shown on this map with an X. They're either under construction or under either a concept review or development plan review for projects other than affordable housing. And in talking with the developers, they're of course looking for a fast no. They don't want to go through the entire development review process to find out that there's no interest on a particular site that might not be shown in our comprehensive plan or our housing plan. So that's really why we brought it forward to Committee of the Whole in June. And with the direction from the Committee of the Whole, we went back and we identified 8 additional areas that might make some sense as appropriate for affordable housing. Those additional sites are shown in blue. The ones that are already in the affordable housing plan are shown in orange. I'm just going to take a quick minute to walk through each one of those sites. The first one is the Crossings of Geneva. This is a senior living facility that was approved for 250 units in 5 different buildings. You can kind of see in the aerial here, only 2 of the buildings have been constructed to date. It is in close proximity to the hospital, Geneva Commons, Pace bus service. It's already zoned for multifamily. It's shown as multifamily on our comp plan. So we thought this would make some easy sense as an affordable senior living facility. That's why it's recommended in this plan.
Hey, David, before you get any farther,
Sure.
how many units will it take to get to the 10%, so I can start doing math as you...
I did the math this morning. I think we're like 363 units thereabouts, shy from being at 10%, right? The second site is Blackberry Commons. This is about 2.5 acres directly behind the Walgreens on Brisher and State. It is shown as its own business district, B1 business district, and it's shown as remaining commercial in our comprehensive plan but its limited visibility from both Brisher and State haven't really made it a viable commercial site. It does have close proximity to pharmacy, bank, grocery, bus service, and it's also just a few minutes away from the hospital. So we thought this was another location that might make some sense for some higher density housing. The next site is on South Gary Lane, currently industrial properties, light industrial properties. We've actually been approached by some of the owners of those properties and asked if we would consider going to multifamily housing in this location. And going back to our 2003 comprehensive plan, it shows this 20 acres as a potential development opportunity. If the light industrial, we wanted to maintain our light industrial tax base, or our industrial tax base, if those uses were relocated east of Kirk Road into the Geneva Business Park, or now our southeast industrial area, we should consider other uses such as residential, community facilities, or recreational uses on the south side of Gary Lane. I think the challenge with this site would be if we consider any kind of dense housing development, we would have to deal with traffic. And that intersection of South, Caneville, Cambridge, and Gary Lane would probably need a signal that's interconnected with Caneville and Randall. So that would be a cost, of course, that goes to the developer. But that's really the biggest challenge with this site. Moving just a little further east, this is the Burgess Norton site. It's about 22 acres. Existing use is industrial, zoning is industrial. The comp plan from 2003 also shows this as a potential opportunity site if that industrial use is relocated to an industrial park. And that uses we should consider would be residential, community facilities, or low-intensity commercial. The next site is on the west side of Batavia Avenue, just across the Fabian West Forest Preserve. It's about 14 and a half acres. The rear 2.5 acres are undeveloped. There's currently office and research uses on the site. The existing zoning is light industrial, but this is another site that the comp plan identified as a development opportunity site for mixed use, which could include either more offices, medical campuses, or even residential uses. Moving north, this is along Stevens Street and the Burgess Norton campus on the north side of town. These are all kind of small industrial uses. Again, if these were relocated to one of our industrial business parks, this is an area that the 2003 comp plan identified as being redeveloped for residential or small community neighborhood commercial uses. The next site is a city-owned piece. South Christie Avenue, just north of the railroad tracks. It's about 4 acres. Its current zoning is rural residential, which is the most restrictive residential zoning district we have. It's identified in our comp plan and in most recently the downtown master plan as parks or open space, potentially a new parking lot and trailhead for Island Park. We thought it might make sense to, if we could get some high-density housing there, we can maybe accomplish both of those goals on one site. And then the final site we identified for consideration is the southwest corner of State and Kirk. This is about 11 acres. This site has very restricted access due to the proximity of the state and county right-of-ways there. And the slope of the property as you go south towards the bridge deck, it's just not a very viable commercial site. So we thought if there were interest in this site, it's one that maybe we could consider for residential use. It's also worth noting that the enclaves of Geneva, just to the east, was a site that was identified as a potential as well. So these 8 additional sites that we've identified, if the committee of the whole wants to include them in the affordable housing plan, this is not a change to the zoning regulations for the property. It's simply changing the plan and giving staff something to work with developers on to say these are the sites that the city council has said we will consider for higher density housing. It's not a guaranteed approval, but it gives us something to go off of as a starting point.
Alderman
Questions,
Bladra.
and they have to answer them.
How did you go about
choosing these sites, did you just identify, is this every remaining site available of sufficient size in our community, or is it a subset of every available?
It's not every remaining site. We don't have many remaining sites available, so there was some scanning of the map, just looking for open spaces, but then it was reviewing those areas against our adopted plans, whether it was the 2003 comp plan or a downtown plan. We have plenty of vacant industrial areas that we've had interest in, but we did not recommend those on this plan because we're trying to maintain our industrial base.
Right.
Especially if we relocate some of the existing ones as shown on these sites to those parks, we want to make sure that we're preserving that space for industrial use.
Okay, thanks.
You. Alderman Singer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I was asleep at the switch here, David, but I didn't see the Lewis Road.
The Lewis Road piece is already on the affordable housing plan. It is right there. That's the city's Lewis Road piece.
And what's the prognosis on that?
Well, it's shown as an opportunity site on the plan. We have some challenges with access to that site. Right now, we don't have any interest in that site.
Yeah.
It's kind of a landlocked piece, so we're trying to work out access to the site. That's been a challenge.
Okay, what's the next step here, David? This is before us for approval,
For recommending approval?
recommendation for approval. I'm sure we will probably do so. My hope is we will. It'll come before the council next week. If it's done unanimously, we're on our way. What follows this procedure?
Well, if it's approved, this would be a valuable tool for staff. I do have developers, one that's calling me almost weekly, asking for a status update on these sites. It'll give us something to use to give him and say, these are the sites that the city council has identified as willing to consider affordable housing on. We didn't feel comfortable identifying other sites without the city council's support, without amending our planning documents to do that.
So the intent here is that, with the hopes, is that there are developers that would approach you, call you, seeking these kinds of developments or areas for a development that they would be interested in creating, and you then can show them these sites as such that they are available to them? Is there going to be other concerns as far as, well, what about the zoning issues here and as such? Would that have to be taken in consideration?
Well, that's when we would get into the development review process. If they decided to file an application, we would take a much closer look at the site with the project
Yeah.
that they're proposing and see if there are traffic concerns or issues with setbacks, lot coverage, stormwater management, whatever it might be. I will say that since the plan was adopted last October, we've had, I think it's 8 or 9 sites that have fallen off the map already because they were kind of the low-hanging fruit. And these affordable housing developers that have approached the city, sorry, I'm just trying to get back to that slide. You know, the low-hanging fruit's no longer available, so we have other sites that are still available, but they're either partially constructed and then abandoned projects or landlocked pieces, so they were looking for other opportunities, and that's really what prompted the question back in June.
Have you had much interest in promoting anyone seeking anyone interested in promoting this project, these proposals?
It's slowed down a little bit now that we're kind of getting into the fall season here, and the application deadlines have passed for this year. But like I said, we still do have developers that call routinely asking for the status of just this amendment to the plan. So we do have a lot of interest. And as long as we don't meet that 10% threshold, I think we'll continue to see that interest.
I remember it was some time ago when you and I attended that gathering at Batavia.
Right.
And there was some interest or a sense that we should begin shall we say, establishing a stronger relationship with some of the industrial entities in our community to see if they, in the turn, might in some way help to incorporate or encourage some housing because of the issues dealing with the needs for employers or employees, and certainly because of the fact
Oftentimes, people who work in that kind of environment cannot find their way to live in a community such as ours.
Right.
So have you been able to find anyone interested in helping promote that issue?
We have. I made a brief presentation at the mayor's industrial breakfast over the summer on the affordable housing issue and the topic of employer-assisted housing, where employers can assist with down payments to give their workers an opportunity to locate closer to work. We're actually having a multi-chamber event October 7th with the mayor of each of the communities involved in the Homes for a Changing Region plan giving a presentation, and then we'll have a more detailed look at employer-assisted housing and how our larger employers can assist their workers in locating in the area.
What's the format going to be over in St. Charles here in this gathering here in a week or so?
It's a public meeting. You're welcome to attend. I can
Yes.
send you the invitation information. Actually, I'll send it out to the entire council if anyone's interested.
What's the basis of that gathering? What are
The focus is on employer-assisted housing.
Yes,
That's a program where employers can provide down payment assistance to help their employees purchase a home. And that's really it's a forgivable loan, so it encourages employee retention. If they stay for 5 years, the loan's forgiven. If they leave before, they have to pay the employer back. And it also, there's tax credits that the employer can get for participating in the program, and it's really a flexible program. I mean, I don't have all the details with me tonight, but I'd be happy to share more with
yeah.
you. But that's really the focus of that meeting, is to go over that in detail with the larger employers in town.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Singer. Alderman Bruno?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like having the additional sites specified. I think it goes a long way toward, as developers walk up to us, they know that we at least want to have a conversation. They don't just look on the website and walk away. That said, and there's probably value having those dots on the map. Some of those parcels, though, are anything but vacant or derelict. For instance, any of the Burgess Norton sites, that would be some monumental undertaking to switch over to the other industrial park when it comes online. No, I mean, it's good. It's good to have the map. Thank you.
Alderman Sino?
I just have a question, like when we go forward this, I know this is putting the cart before the horse, but that we're looking at the schools' capacities. Obviously you're gonna have a place where if you're gonna have multiple children living there, and then you have to make sure that the school can handle the added.
Right.
And I just feel like towards the east side properties, Harrison's pretty full, and that we should look to make the other schools a
Right.
little bit more
With each
capacity.
residential development, if it's a subdivision or plan unit development, there's a land cash worksheet that
Right.
the developer has to fill out, and it estimates how many students will be generated by the development.
Right.
And if the school or park districts don't want land for a new school, they'll take a cash contribution to either make changes to the existing facilities to accommodate the additional children, what have you.
Yeah, I just don't want a whole nother, like, busing issue like they have in St. Charles, where they're,
We're actually working with both districts right now to update our subdivision regulations, and we're trying to understand what their capacity levels are in relation to what our capacity to grow is as we modify that ordinance, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderman Marks?
David, I know you mentioned the property on Gary Lane, that some of those owners have come forward and at least spoken to it. Have any of the property owners of any of these other parcels that we're looking at tonight, have we had any discussions with them? I know we're not changing the zoning, but I'd hate for them to wake up tomorrow morning and all of a sudden see a blue dot.
I did have a conversation with Rob Burns, who owns the property, 1950 and 2000 South Batavia Avenue.
Okay.
And we haven't notified all the property owners. A lot of the sites that we identified are already identified for housing, a potential housing site in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
But it doesn't restrict the property. It actually only provides another opportunity.
Okay.
If the owner is not interested in participating in affordable housing, it really can't happen.
Okay. I just wondered what that process was. I mean, you know, again, I don't want people waking up tomorrow morning seeing in the newspaper all of a sudden a piece of
Right.
property.
And as a community, we haven't started to mandate affordable housing, so it's not like we've identified these sites and said if housing goes here, it must be affordable, or it must be
Okay.
a certain percentage affordable. That's not something, we haven't taken that step, so.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the dais? Alderman Radecki?
Yeah, of all the sites that, that you just showed us right now as potentials for inclusion into that, and I wholeheartedly agree that we should, make them available and make that part of the plan going forward for consideration. The first one, the crossing seems to be the one, that just jumps out at me that's got some pizzazz to it, that has some pretty quick potential, the location of it, that it's ready to go. What are your feelings as far as, some of these, as Alderman Bruno pointed out, this might take a monumental effort to make these things ready to go. That seems like it's one that's ready to plug and play. Is that your feeling too, or?
I would agree with you. We've had discussions with the owner of that property over the past few years, and I know they've tried to find a partner to work with. If we know that this is a potential affordable housing site, we can try to put them in contact with the property owner and see if there's interest on his behalf. So I would agree with you. I think that's the lowest hanging fruit out there.
Yeah, I think I recall when the reserve was being considered and they were doing site locations for senior housing. I do vividly recall the person that did the siting who pointed out about that area that he may have never seen a place so ideally suited for senior housing because of the proximity to hospitals. You have a fire station right there. You have shopping right there. He just went on and on and on about, this truly is, if you were to plot a senior housing development in an area, that the amenities surrounding it and the support, that area is pretty well, with the hospital there and all the other facilities, it's pretty ideal for that.
Agree.
Anyone else from the dais? Anyone from the audience? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Thanks, David. We now are on new business. Alderman Kilberg?
Yes, I just want to take a moment tonight to briefly share with the council and the community the sad news relating to the passing of Stephen Hicks. Stephen was a local mail carrier that served the east side of Geneva for nearly 20 years. Steve was a large African-American man with a gentle smile, thoughtful word, very kind disposition, and you saw Stephen, you'd know who I'm talking about because he had an unmistakable shuffling gait as he moved from house to house and block to block on the east side. One day, while I was in the yard, I asked Stephen about how many miles he covered a day when he made his rounds, and he said it was somewhere between 9 and 10 miles per day. Stephen was born in Selma, Alabama, and he located the Fox Valley and found employment as a mail carrier. Stephen was quickly on a first-name basis with most of those he served. In an unassuming way, his attention to detail and his willingness to take time to visit with those he grew to know and serve while completing his daily rounds will be greatly missed. He was truly a goodwill ambassador for the United States Postal Service. He was one of those special individuals that has long served and helped make Geneva a special place we all proudly call home. Our thoughts and prayers are with Stephen and his family at his untimely passing. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Kilberg. Anybody else for business? One last note. I forgot to tell you all who I was at the beginning of this. So I'll end it with Tom Simonian, Alderman, 5th Ward, myself and my senior partner, Alderman Maladra. As I say, walk the streets and keep our city streets and alleys safe on a regular basis. But thank you all, and I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Alderman Marks? Second. Alderman Sino? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you all. Have a good night.